15-minute cities, restriction of movement, destruction of your wealth. This is the grim future of new feudalism that my guest, John Lee, sees coming for humanity. He believes that gold, silver, and commodities are the only escape hatch, but what does this all have to do with a mineral called fluorspar? Now, John is the CEO of CleanTech Vanadium, and fluorspar is one of the main commodities that they deal in. It's essential for AI data centers, battery storage, and so much more. Let's dive into it with John Lee. Let's kick things off today with the silver space. I definitely want to get into clean tech as well, but I always love talking to you about silver because you have great insights. And we're back above $80. Where do you see the silver market headed from here? And do you think we see a return to triple digits and maybe even new all-time highs here in 2026?
I don't know, Jesse, to be honest. I think there's pros and cons for silver. First of all, if you look at gold, usually silver follows gold, meaning that when gold goes up and silver goes up twice, but when gold is correcting and silver gets whacked twice as hard. So here is a very rare scenario happening in the last couple of weeks where gold is still lurking below the 50-day moving average of about 47.50, and but yes, silver has broken out, and so I was a little bit dumbfounded, and I looked up the markets again. You saw that copper is broken out at all-time high, and that also took me a little by surprise because I'm not sure if you. I've come on a number of broadcasts, including I believe yours, that I am not a big fan of base metal commodities because the world is not, the economy's not doing well across the world based on what I see, not what I hear or what I read. And so I was not too bullish on copper. Yep, copper is broken out. So therefore, it's always difficult to forecast silver prices. It's got a duality of industrial metal and investment demand. And usually it's the investment demand that drive the market, that dictate the terms of the market, not so much on the industrial demand. They're usually more of a price taker. Under the circumstance, I likely the case that there is some credence to potentially somebody start to stockpile again, namely China or elsewhere. And that you see a strong move of copper broke out of the $6 handle. It looks like it is a real breakout. And that silver is tagging along for the ride. And there's also some rumor that China is importing silver, but much of that nobody really knows what China is doing, what is buying, what is selling. Because keep in mind that China is one of the largest processors of silver, so there's a lot of trades, intermediate product, finished product, and whatever the import-export data also has to be taken with a grain of salt. Nonetheless, it's an interesting diversion that very few occasions is what is happening now that silver is trending with copper and not so much trending with gold. So under the circumstances, I don't know. Yeah, and the answer is I don't know. But given that copper is a big market, you got to stay with the technicals, which is the breakout is genuine, and that. But then if that is the case, last time silver went up to over 100, it was there only briefly. 120, it got whacked back to 70, right? So therefore, we are in a new territory that's uncharted, and anybody that profess to tell you where silver is headed with whatever complex analysis, probably is as a guess as anybody else's.
Yeah, and some interesting comments about China there. Bloomberg reporting that in March of this year, China imported the most silver within a single month ever. You mentioned they process a lot of it. They're also the world's second biggest producer, which I don't believe is touched on enough. Now, I want to talk about the interesting phenomenon that's been going on with both gold and silver and the war in Iran, because a pattern has emerged. When peace talks are teased, both metals seem to rise, and when it looks like the war will continue, they fall. I mean, this goes contrary to a lot of people's expectations in gold and silver as potential safe haven assets or a hedge in times of geopolitical uncertainty. Why do you think this sort of pattern has emerged? And if this war drags on, do you expect that trend to reverse?
The markets have been behaving, gold and silver have been behaving as they should, meaning that in the times of war, uncertainty, crisis, gold and silver got whacked because the dollar goes up, and the silver and gold usually goes the opposite that direction. A couple of casing points, if you look at the 2009 financial crisis, I think gold correct. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember because I lost a lot of money in both occasions, right? Low in gold and silver say, oh my God, people are going to save refuge. The point is, Jesse, in the times of crisis, a war, there is a run for liquidities. People start deleveraging. And then there's going to be, so people are not in the mood to speculate. And what happened is the dollar is usually the safe haven. So they'll drive the dollar up. And then in the short term, at least, gold and silver were correct, especially silver. If you look at 2009 and 2021, I think silver corrected more than 50% on both occasions. Like recently, I think 2000 financial crisis, 2021, during COVID, silver went from around 30 to low teens. I remember that. I've been silver 25 years. So so the market's behaving as norm, meaning that when there's bombs drop, the dollar rally, oil rally, and gold and silver corrected. But then when there's times of potential peace offering, that the dollar tank, and then gold and silver actually rally in relief. The cycle is being rinsed and repeated so many times. And I think a lot of the insiders being around are holding the same view based on empirical evidence and deductive reasoning, that they've been on the sideline. So you see the first whack of silver went from 122 down to 62. And the second whack of silver it started with, I think, with February and March and April. That has been going on for about 2.5 months. So it started at 62, 80, 90 to 62, 78 to 67, and then 75 to 72, and eventually guys just like, I've had it, right? Like, oh, I think there was somewhat of a decision that this consolidation is eventually to say is broken out. But nonetheless, you never know that if the war, that maybe there's consensus the war is going to get resolved, that people have some conviction of that, who knows? Well, actually, my view is not. Or people thinks that the downside for gold and silver is already in place, so that even if the war breaks out, that the downside will be limited to 62, and when silver went to 62, I thought it was going to go to the 50s, and it would have been possible because that was the 50-day moving average, and the silver was around 4,300, the low 4,200, but the 50-day moving average is 4,100. So like it didn't really finish completely that correction, but it never got to that 50-day moving average. So, but you never know if the war goes on an extended period of time beyond sort of the common expectations. You could potentially see another, very rapid sort of a sudden dip, especially with silver, because it's a lot smaller in terms of liquidity, and also a surging dollar also gives the cartels an opportunity. Like whenever there's a crisis, right? You can never you always got to take advantage in times of crisis. So you can also potentially expect the cartels to whack the market in opportune times when the dollar is surging.
Well, speaking of the war, obviously we've seen the Strait of Hormuz be closed. A lot of people are waking up to the importance of commodities to the global economy in the aftermath. Talk to us about vanadium and fluorspar, the main metals CleanTech Vanadium is involved with. Are those supply chains affected at all by the conflict? And what is your overall thesis at present for both commodities?
Yeah, Middle East do not. Well, let's talk about fluorspar because that is a market that's been hot lately. And recall that, Jesse, when I came on your program, we just started this foray into fluorspar, and I was pounding my chest. I'm not sure if I stayed in your program and said this is going to be a 10-bagger, but it went up 10 times, I believe. I think when I came on your program, the acquisition trail just started, and the stock was like 3 cents or 4 cents. I said, this is a no-brainer. It went to 50 cents, and now it's settling at around 15 cents. Fluorspar, there's no fluorspar production in the Middle East, so there's not so much as a supply disruption from the Middle East per se, based on the Strait of Hormuz. But fluorspar is mostly produced in 60% from China, and China has become a net importer. Jesse, let me just step back to talk 5 minutes about the geopolitiks. I think it's important to give your audience a bit of landscape of what's happening and maybe answer some of your questions based on my research. Which we talked about the peasants, the king. Now I developed deeper is the definition of feudalism. And for feudalism to thrive, before the king offers protection to the lord offers protection to the knight, and the knight offers protection to the commons. And eventually the system broke down 400, 500 years ago because of mobility. People start moving around. They see different parts of the world. They're not there to pay a toll again. They don't own the land. They're not so keen to invest in, like they become mobile, right? So it's they stop paying rent to something that they're going to be moving around. And then secondly, they become more. They start accumulating wealth in gold and silver, so they can seek to seek their own, bring their own protection rather than having the protection being centralized. So then go back to this era of feudalism, a new modern era of feudalism. For this new modern era of feudalism to work, first of all, they have to restrict your movement. So there comes the 15-minute city. This comes the carbon credit, and there comes the social credit system. And then secondly, they got to control your wealth. They don't make sure that you don't become too wealthy. So there comes the central digital CBDC, central digital currency, which is going to be, it's what they call the programmable money, of which you're going to be dictated on where to buy, what to buy, and when to buy. If there's another hunter virus, then your digital money is not going to be good after midnight. And if you want to take a drive coast on the Pacific Coast Highway on want to buy a can of Coca-Cola in a Costco when you have a 7-Eleven next door, then you cannot do that, right? So that's the whole reason, and that's why they're whacking gold and silver, because that's a true wealth form of money. And they're going to make this programmable money that your money actually would expire if you don't spend within a certain period of time. And the combination of the social credit, carbon credit system with digital currency is the new control mechanism for the new feudalism. And the reason Iran is attacked because Iran, Russia, and China, this bloc, right, form an ecosystem that will act in defiance of the feudalism system, because they have oil, they have factories, they have natural resources. And that's the reason Iran is attacked. And Jesse, if you to hear all the new lingo from the administration is Iran cannot have nuclear weapon, Iran cannot have nuclear weapon. Every question, this answer is the same. What does it take for the peace talk to bring back the peace? Iran cannot have nuclear weapon. What are we looking to do? Iran cannot have nuclear weapon. And then you say, well, that's exactly what happened to Saddam Hussein back in Iraq war in 2001. And they went there, they couldn't find weapons of mass destruction, but then the last one going there anyway. And what is it to say that if Iran come to their senses and say, okay, I agree with you, we're not going to have nuclear weapon. Here's a 600 kilograms of enriched uranium. There you have it, not going to have peace. What is for Trump to come back and say, well, I think you have 700. You're hiding 100 somewhere, right? Or to say that, okay, you sign a peace deal of which they can then 2 months later they say, oh, that's even better. You don't have uranium now. It's a cake in the walk, and then they come back and do another campaign, and everything's well calculated. I don't think the people in charge are so dumb and thinking that they're not going to retaliate. Iran is not going to retaliate. Oil is not going to go to $150, $200, and the war is going to be wreaking havoc. Jesse, that's great. That's exactly what the king wants. High oil price, people cannot move anymore. If Saudi and UAE oils are destroyed, then the Middle East being left a mess. That's excellent. The troops that are stationed in the Middle East, they're not coming back. All the military installations being destroyed. Israel is being destroyed. There's no rehabilitation. there's no other option, and the only option is for a massive ground troop invasion into Iran and and then turn that into a wasteland and guerrilla fighting wasteland, and use that as a springboard to instill additional instabilities toward Russia and towards China. The exact language that Trump uses, Iran is being sponsoring terror, ripping the United States off for 47 years. You could just replace Iran with China. It would be the same. And the next one after Iran would be China, which would be a riot broke out in Xinjiang or Tibet. And then the UN resolution passed a resolution to bring up peacekeepers within Chinese borders, and then you have it, right? They're deliberately choking the oil supply into China from Venezuela and from Iran, which are the two largest sources of. And after that, they're already bombing Moscow, for God's sake, or Russia oil refineries and Russian ports, thousands of kilometers from the frontier border. And all these mysterious refineries that go on fire in India, Oklahoma, Texas. Like, So there is a concern effort to jack up the oil price. Now, Jesse, with that all in mind, there's one thing I want to also talk about. Then I think recall that I've been telling your audience about rising interest rate. Interest are going to be a lot higher. I've been saying that for months and months because, again, to fit the 2030 agenda, the Fed has a limited ability to monetize debt, to keep the interest rate for as low as they want, for as long as they want, as they did the last 10 years, to get people addicted to debt. So they could have easily kept the interest rate low, but yet they're not. And also, Jesse, in the times of uncertainties and war, when the dollar rallies, the treasury should be going up. They're not should be going down as people seek for look for safe haven. So the entire everything just play out as I mentioned, the 2030 agenda of own nothing and be happy, higher oil price and higher interest rates to wipe out the middle class. There's one thing I want to talk about. Allow me before we talk about Fluorspar, which is equity prices beginning going up, and people say, "Oh, you can hear a lot of your pundits say that the equity is going to crash." And I also mentioned to you that's not going to be the case because the king owns assets. They print. They don't play by the rule. They're not constrained by liquidity, by tightening, or by QE or QP or whatever. So they're being printed by, and to the point where Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock own collectively around 90% of S&P. That just really so that is the difference between today's market versus say 2021 or 29 financial crisis, that where the king already amassed overwhelming majority of the assets on the S&P 500. At the same time, if you look at the earnings of Micron, so started with NVIDIA, and it's all going to come to the point I'm going to drive very, very quickly. It started with NVIDIA. So, I mean, NVIDIA and now Micron, they're basically siphoning, right? The big seven, the Amazon, the Yahoo, the Google, the Microsoft, and the Metas. They're basically taking those money in the name of AI to build all those infrastructures. And so therefore, there's actually an inverse relationship now, almost like when Micron and NVIDIA going up like crazy, and then you have Microsoft and Oracle and the Facebook that's going down because it's a transfer of money. And essentially what's happened is, for example, well, not for example, but approximately $100 billion from each of those companies collectively, around $700 billion is being invested in this year alone to build data centers, right? So this $700 billion, which is going to be taken out of the cash of the balance sheet or off balance sheet, but the $700 billion being transferred to NVIDIA and Micron. But that doesn't translate to $700 billion increase in valuation. Rather, that will translate to $7 trillion increase in valuation because the multiples effect, because these are booked up as revenue, and these companies' profit margins are 80, 70, 80%. So $700 billion going into NVIDIA and Micron, and then they basically booked up an earnings of $500 billion, but you apply a multiple earnings of 10 to 20, and then that's their, Jesse, that is your increase in the NASDAQ and in the S&P. The question then becomes, and then you have the entire world speculating on one sector alone, which is AI, much like the internet in 2001. The question is, how long can this go on? I actually think, interestingly, Jesse, to say that this can go on for a little longer, and the reason is that if you look at the balance sheet of Amazon and Google, and these companies are almost debt-free. And these are $1 trillion, like collectively, the market capitalization, these companies are around $10 trillion, the Googles and Microsoft. So these companies collected $10 trillion, and now they only got about $500 billion of debt. If you look like the other industries, like airline companies, pharmaceuticals, travel industries, hotel industry, usually their debt is around 30 to 50, well, some of them are 100% of the market cap. So that means that these companies have another runway of at least 2 to 3 years to continue to invest in AI if they choose to put in another $2 or $3 trillion into these infrastructure development and this capitalistic company, which means that they could translate to another 10 to 20 trillion dollars in valuation bump from this. It's Jesse, some of it unimaginable, but that is the effect of fractional banking that these companies can just borrow out of thin air and continue to finance. And that's why another reason that if you look at the consumer price, if you look at consumer sentiment, right, and just general economy, they're in the gutter. But yeah, and this NASDAQ has gone up again 1% today, and Micron's gone up, everything's going up. and they're completely shielded from the war because this oligopoly, these Mag 7, they're running like a central bank. I mean, they got so much war chest that they can dictate the terms. Now go back to answering your question about fluorspar. Here's the point: is fluorspar is all about energy. 6 fluorine is required to enrich 1 uranium, to levitate gasified uranium, to separate the U-235 from U-238. All uranium bug followers understood that. So it's irreplaceable. It's like the Robin to the Batman in nuclear enrichment. That accounts for about 20% of overall fluorspar usage and consumption. And another rapidly rising usage of fluorspar is semiconductors, which account for about 5%, but it's increasing because it's used to carry. Fluorspar is the carrier of all these exotic metals, and then into the wafer, silicon wafer, and then etching of the silicon wafer, and then cleaning of the silicon wafer of the wafer. So that's all hydrofluoric acid. It's all fluorine. And then third is batteries. Oh, batteries, huge. 6 fluorine items marries a lithium or sodium ion battery. And it's not so much EV revolution. I mean, for example, Amazon, I think it was Metal Amazon, the news just came out. They are going to build a 9 gigawatt AI factory in Utah. 9 gigawatts. So that is, I mean, the world's largest nuclear power plant is Bruce Power in Canada. I think that's 3 or 4 gigawatts, and it's like 4 years. That's like 20 years to get to that point. And it takes 10 years to build a 1 gigawatt power plant, nuclear plant, 10 years and several $1 billion. The only way to sustain a 9 gigawatt, just one factory, the only answer is solar. But then you build the solar, but these AI factories run 24/7. You have to get these batteries. That's why solar with renewable is the largest increase in power creation in China. They're building tens of gigawatts, 30, 40 gigawatts of batteries in solar panels, solar farms every year. And that's why China is consuming today around 6 million tons of fluorspar, over 6 million tons. And guess what? How much fluorspar is the United States consuming today? 400,000 tons. I estimate to keep up one 5 gigawatt batteries, gigawatt data centers, you probably are going to need 100,000, 200,000 tons of fluorspar. Just one plant. And they're building in Louisiana, in Utah, in Carolinas. And what's also interesting, say, John, so Jesse, you asked me, John, so why the fuck is CleanTech trading at 20 cents? Well, the answer is very clear. Like the writing was on the wall for rare earth, right? These rare earth projects are worth $10 billion today in California. They're being recycled twice out of bankruptcy as late as 2019. And all of a sudden the market cap went from 50 million to like $5 billion because, oh my God, I need it for Mac. It's not like all of this is a new invention or patent which dictate they require requisite rare earth. And the same with NVIDIA. So I was a little bit dumbfounded. Okay, let's see. Okay, if you're going to do AI, you're going to need NVIDIA chips. Okay, I got that. But the NVIDIA has been running up from nothing obscure to 3 trillion for 2 years. But all of a sudden, as these data centers start coming online, people say, wait a second, I need memory. So Micron went from like 500 million to like $800 billion, 500 million to 800 billion. It's like almost 20 times increase in the last 12 months. It just shows you that investors so nearsighted. They're just so following the herd. But guess what? Okay, now you have the chips, you have the software model, you have your stack of racks of hardware, and now you got your memory in there. Guess you're gonna what? You're gonna turn the moment of truth, the moment of epiphany. Once they turn it on, they're gonna realize, hey guys, where is the power? And you are seeing already rationing of power of communities because they don't have enough power in Michigan, in Carolinas, and soon in Utah. And what are they going to do? There's nuclear is not an option. Then there's not a nuclear power plant coming out in the next 10 years, maybe 2 at the most. And even if a nuclear power plant comes as 1 gigawatt, that cannot even support a fraction of a data center in Utah. What are you going to do, Jesse? The only thing they can do is solar. But then to make that a continuous operation, you have to have batteries. And that's what this game is all about. It's not only, this is inevitable. It's like gravity. It's Well, actually, Jesse, there's actually a new theory that defied the Einstein theory of relativity and gravitational force, that gravity actually can be bent and could be negated, but that's such a for a different day. That fluorspar is, we're so incredibly bullish right now in Jesse, in fluorspar, that the stock is at 15 cents. I think it's another 10 baggers in the making before said and done in the next 3 to 5 years. Hugely bullish, because the world cannot do without fluorspar in the AI universe. And you know what? Just one thing before we go to the next question, which is energy. We're also huge bullish in energy, but as I mentioned again, these data centers are not measured in computing power or in number of processors or in number of NVIDIA chips or number of flops they can compute. It's in gigawatt, which is power. That's why it's a little perplexed that right now there's inverse relationship between oil and tech, right? Because people are still perceiving oil as a commodity, which is barbaric relic, it's old school, it's the past. So there's almost is a money that's moving back and forth between tech and commodity. I beg to differ, Jesse. I think within the next 1 or 2 years, you're gonna see AI, tech sector and energy sector go in tandem, in parallel. So that includes oil and natural gas. Because the more data center you're gonna build, the more power you're gonna need. Eventually, and oil and gas is energy. So the world is like in a state of confusion right now. In time, they're gonna figure it out that energy and AI go together, and energy is oil and gas in the traditional way, and the solar renewables together with batteries. And batteries is all about fluorspar, Jesse.
Well, John, you've just provided 30 minutes of incredible value to the audience. So guys, stick around to hear about CleanTech Vanadium, because it's a very fascinating company. Why don't you start off by giving us an overview of the company, what your why you think it's a compelling story, and what the overall strategy is?
Jesse, you have quite many great analysts, pundits, many of them whom I follow and talk to, are actually good friends with. But this is one of the episodes that's going to be game-changing, life-changing. I mean, it is a game changer. Now, CleanTech, we've been going tirelessly around the clock since we sort of moved into this, gravitated towards rotated into this new fluorspar angle. Because I was in China, as I mentioned to you earlier last year. All they talk about is fluorspar, chemical companies, fluorspar. It's 172 applications, from your Teflon to refrigerant, chemicals, semiconductors, nuclear enrichment, and aluminum steel making, in fluxing agent, and also in batteries. That's why I came back to research and said, oh my God, this is a second Jesus coming, like your first name. We've been working tirelessly, and now CleanTech is one of the largest landholder in fluorspar in terms of the size of the land package, and also in terms of the historical resource and in number of deposit potential. So today, CleanTech is in control of over 17,000 acres of highly prospective fluorspar mineral rights in Kentucky, Illinois. And that is the size, Jesse, of Manhattan. And within the 17,000 acres, there is I would say around a dozen trends, faults, all with their own distinct deposit, which CleanTech has a foothold. The analogy I want to use for your audience is think of a sort of a hotspots in Manhattan, right? So you have Central Park, right? Upper West Side, you have Brooklyn, you have Manhattan, Lower East Side, you have Union Square, you have Chelsea, you have the meatpacking district, you have. So this is what we're grappling with. We own a fluorspar district the size of Manhattan, of which we have all this different district. Each one of these dozen or so area could turn into a world-class discovery that can more than enough supply the United States consumption for a generation or maybe more. So, and then in terms of the address, Illinois, Kentucky Fluorspar District, IKFD to fluorspar is like Battle Mountain to gold. 95% of the historical fluorspar production in the United States came from this district that measures around 600 square miles, of which CleanTech controls around 15 to 20% today. We just did that in the last 12 months. So all the easiest hanging fruits already being collected, being taken. if you're gonna hunt, if you're gonna invest in gold, hunt for gold in the United States, you go to Battle Mountain. And then if you're looking for fluorspar, along with actually rare earth, we discovered some rare earth showings and trace mineral like germanium, gallium. All the exotics are highly correlated to fluorspar. Just so you know why? Because as I mentioned to you, fluorspar is a highly reactive element. It can marry to everything, especially exotics, the inerts, the uranium, the exotic metals that doesn't respond or answer to anything. But fluorspar gets to them like magnets. And that's why we are finding all these rare exotics. In short, this is one or two maybe companies with dedicated with exposure to U.S. fluorspar that's listed on the American Stock Exchange. The area is the size of Manhattan. We have over a terabyte of data we have collected as part of the acquisitions. That data back 200 years ago. And it's got proven metallurgy, historical production. We got some of the largest chemical company, nuclear enrichment company from the United States knocking out door. Some of the largest auto manufacturers, Asian semiconductor manufacturers. The names are the big seven. They're calling us, asking for fluorspar. Because they had already some history of procuring from this district. And they say, John, I noticed you acquired this project. We used to buy from this area like 7 years ago. And the reason they stopped buying, not because the resource has been exhausted, but rather China in the late 70s started producing fluorspar, dumping fluorspar in the market. And then in the early 2000s, US sold off all this fluorspar to strategic stockpile because all the commodities are very relevant. So it's not that the resources ran out. Literally, it was just economic, like it's a new era, right? New internet era. So we're very confident of the metallurgy, excellent infrastructure. They're on private land, which means that we're not governed by Bureau of Land Management, by the federal government, where there's no EPA, there's no BOM. We've dealt with them for 10 years in Nevada, which is the time that it takes for a mine to be developed. And then, the icing on the cake, Jesse, is we're also in discussion with the U.S. government agencies, which had tendered out a $250 million fluorspar strategic stockpile. And so they are rethinking about this whole periodic table. Unfortunately, we didn't meet the criteria because we're not in the stage of production at this time. The mandate, I'm probably leading up to your next one, is for us not to be drilling out the size of Manhattan. That's going to take forever. Like me and my grandchild, this is going to take forever. I'll just say, you know what? We're going to do like 20 holes. And we're going to do the holes exactly where we're going to mine for the next 12 months and no more. We're going to preserve our shareholder value. We're going to save our money. And we're going to just get down to business. We had a very successful site visit in March to our project. Over a dozen investors came, about a dozen. We couldn't host anymore. And we met with the Kentucky Reclamation Mining Enforcement. It's a great agency. And they remind me of the United States back 100 years ago, before the federal government started intervening in the mining industry. And what I mean by that is, I said, do we need a permit to drill? They said, well, if you're processing a private land, why do I need to issue a permit if you're just going to take a hole in the ground? They said, oh, okay, that makes sense. Great. And we were told that the timeline is to prepare a permit for mining permit and processing permit. There's separate permits by the end of the year. We could potentially be breaking grounds by this time next year. In fact, we want to maybe do earlier than that. The mining will start first, but the processing plant is going to take about 2 years to build from the time of the receipt of the permit. So you're looking at maybe towards the end of 2028 to actually have our own plant running. But there's a lot of repurposing plants and other limestone plants of which we can maybe looking into some sort of joint venture. And not so far away, only 100 miles, which is not even an hour drive away in Tennessee, the U.S. government, Jesse, listen to this, wrote a $3 billion check to Korean Zinc, which acquired a zinc smelter, used to be owned by a European conglomerate, NiStar, to build a add-on germanium processing module, for $3 billion. The module, economically, it doesn't, numbers don't add up. So the point I want to emphasize here is these critical minerals like fluorspar, germanium for semiconductor weaponry, rare earth, they are price inelastic, Jesse. It's like the government just doesn't matter. If you have the permit, if you're in production, if you demonstrate track path towards production, based on our conversation with the U.S. government agencies, they have $30 billion available for critical minerals from a combination of Department of War, U.S. Exim Bank, and Department of Commerce. We are hugely bullish what we're doing. And we've been quiet for a while because we really want to tie up all the pieces together before we present the story, before we represent the story again to the audience. So Jesse, just like we talked about 10 months ago when I gave you a glimpse of what's to come. And if that was a little bit tidal wave, you'd be looking at a tsunami, Jesse. It is writing on the wall. And it's the most exciting opportunity I've seen and have experienced and I'm running in my 25 years career in the mining industry.
Well, that's a great summary. Has the company completely pivoted towards fluorspar? Are you still active with your vanadium project in Nevada as well? Talk to us about that and if that's still a path you're pursuing.
It is. The project is what I call the shovel ready. We spent around almost $30 million since CleanTech, which is this parent silver elephants in 2016. And the case study of our vanadium project development is a testament to our ability to execute. We acquired that project, just one little project, vanadium, and now we amassed 21 kilometer strike, several distinct deposits. We completed a technical study. We completed a federal permit, Bureau of Land Management, record of decision for environmental impact statement. I believe not one Canadian mining company achieved that status during the Biden administration era in the last 4 years. We're one or maybe two companies with Barrick that was able to do that, to get an EIS in the United States for greenfield exploration mining project. And so, and then we have excellent local communities. So that thing is, barring a few state permits, which are a lot easier to get, we also acquired a ranch with water and power. We completely thought through and executed that game plan. With one exception, is vanadium price is being sagging because 80% of vanadium is used for steel reinforcement bar construction. And the construction activities globally is literally come to much of a squishing halt. And so vanadium price has been the doldrum in the last 4 years. That's what we have pivoted towards. Doesn't mean that we're not giving that project away, but it's just in a standby and care and maintenance status. This is not the case with fluorspar, Jesse. Today's fluorspar price delivered to the United States is close to $600 a ton. And it's gone up from $50 a ton in 2000. The trajectory has been fairly steady. But in the last 2 years, start going a little parabolic because China become a net importer, competing with the global spar supply in the world rather than a exporter. Coincidentally, the only legible fluorspar exporter supplying fluorspar to the world, which is Mexico, they control 10% of the world's fluorspar production. Outside of Mongolia and China, which control 70% plus, right? So 70 plus 10 is 80, and the other guys are like Vietnam and Africa is only about less than 20%. Mexican fluorspar used to sell at around 30-40% discount into the United States, but that discount is completely evaporated because the biggest competitor that they have, China, is gone. At $600, talk about economics for a minute, Jess. At $600 a ton of fluorspar, acid spar, which is 97% pure calcium fluoride, the stuff coming out of our ground, CleanTech's ground, is around 30 to 60%, which means if we just do a fractional maths calculation, pro rata, the stuff coming out of our ground today is worth about $300 a ton. If you look at some of this Nevada gold mining companies are mining half a grand an ounce per ton, half a grand per ton. That's like $100. Like if you can get $100 per ton of stuff out of the ground, you'll be going gaga. The stuff coming out of our ground is probably worth about $300. So we're not waiting for some impending event or second guessing the price of fluorspar. If anything, it's going to go a lot higher up. In terms of peer evaluation, Mongolian fluorspar, Mongolia right now, I cannot find one single fluorspar project to buy. China's already bought. Chinese petrochemicals, China pharmaceuticals, they're buying fluorspar. Oh, by the way, fluorine also go to 20% of your pills. I'm not sure it's a good thing, but that's the fact that they are. That fluorspar projects in Mongolia are selling at 10 times the valuation of the United States, 10 times. And Australian fluorspar company is selling at 20 times. Our peers, our only fluorspar company that we know, advanced fluorspar project, similar to CleanTech sites in In Australia, their market cap has gone from 100 million right now to $700 million after the news of a Japanese off-taker trader, Sumitomo, agreed to invest in their company for 30% stake in return for investing $150 million. This is the landscape. Anything with the critical minerals. So John, your stock has went up from 5 million to 20 million, right? What is upside? Well, the upside is from 20 million to 2 billion. we're past the first inning, but you're not in the second or third inning. And for anybody who cares to do a little homework and go to our presentation, you will see the comparables. And there is no hidden closet. There's no skeletons in the closet. There's not some gotcha moment. It's just a matter of that U.S. is always late to the game in rare earth, in lithium, in vanadium. Even within the tech sector, it took the market a year to figure out that, hey, if NVIDIA chips are come to life, turn on, they're going to need memory. I mean, it's just such a dumbfounded latency that we're experiencing. And now you're going to see the data centers after the memory, it's going to be power. So power, you're looking at energy, oil and gas, solar farms to be married with Fluorspar. You can see potentially Fluorspar prices gone up 2 to 3 times from here, because for US to be turning on and operating all those data centers, it's going to need 10 times. It's going to need at least 3 times more Fluorspar consumption today, from 500,000 tons to about 2 million tons. But even at that pace, it's only a third what China is consuming today, Jesse.
Is there anything we haven't yet discussed? Is there anything you think it's important to emphasize to potential shareholders of CleanTech? That could include any upcoming catalysts and news flow you've got, or just any points you think it's important to touch on.
We're going to lay down a precise roadmap towards production. This is not a gaslighting exercise. This is not a drill 2 holes and play golf for the rest of the years. This is not 80% of how junior companies operate out of Vancouver, even though our company is out of Vancouver. But I have not been home. I'm still so busy. I have not been home in the last year and a half, Jesse. It's all about Fluorspar. And our mandate is no beating around the bush, is to become the most prominent, the best vehicle to ride the Fluorspar wave, to capture the AI revolution in terms of fulfilling energy demand through batteries and nuclear enrichment. We'll be looking at a drill program, which is going to start in the summer for the purpose of finalizing a mine plan for the resources required for the next for the mining to commence in 2027. We're assembling a top-notch team to prepare the permit for submission this year and to be anticipated approval this time next year. We should talk about our team. We've assembled a world-class team. My friend Jason Reed agreed to come on board as a technical advisor. Jason and I talk every week. He went on the project. He was astounded by the reception, the welcome by the Kentucky permitting agencies. And Jason he was the founder of Gold Resource. And he's right now running Fortitude Gold Mine in Nevada. He's built several mines and returned, I think, close to $1 billion dividend to shareholders in the last 20 years. He is my best guy to go. And we heed his advice in how we can fast track and get this project into production as soon as possible. We've also finalizing our all-star team to get the permitting prepared, and then looking at all the miscellaneous supplemental studies we have to do. There's maybe a couple of baseline studies we have to do in water and air, of which we're going to be shortly commencing awarding those contracts. The rigs are returning, the studies is started, the permitting is getting prepared, and all of that will be shared in the following weeks. With our shareholders, and you're going to see, and we've been staying quiet for a bit because of the war, and also we're doing a lot of the plumbing. But all these things are getting planned out, and we're represented. Jesse, truly exciting story.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to put links in the description below to the CleanTech website, as well as social media for people who want to follow along with the company. John, as always, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.